Welcome to Exiles, a Gospel of Mark podcast. We're coming to you from Grace Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where we're taking what we learn about ancient truths and the person of Jesus into our everyday life. You can check out whoisgrace.com/Mark for the sermon and the resources that we're using for our conversation today. Thanks for joining us. So we'll start as usual with intros. My name's Danielle, and our question of the day, what's a good piece of entertainment you've consumed lately? Book, movie, TV?
Whoa.
Right? Whatever.
That was broad.
Was it? Whatever. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sarah McCosco. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I just got finished watching The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart on Prime Video.
Thank you.
The Lost Flowers.
The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart.
Where did they go?
I will say there. It does have some triggering moments, so just be aware of it before you start watching it. But it's very, very good, and I appreciate the message.
Just a real quick summary, or theme.
It is women who have been through domestic abuse.
Oh, wow.
And the
Yeah, that would be
power
triggering.
that they get. This place is a refuge.
Refuge for them.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, good to know.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Very, very good story. And I
Documentary?
appreciate. No.
Okay, fictional.
Is
Okay,
this what
great.
you watch to unwind?
Did I watch Unwind It?
Like, when you unwind
No,
during
I
like
need to
a long
unwind, yes.
day, you're going to
No.
watch this and like,
Someone was like, hey, you should watch
Okay.
this. And I was like, okay. And then I was dog sitting for a week.
What, and
I
what
was
does
like-
one do when they dog sit other than
they
watch
eat snacks and they watch shows.
Yeah, right.
So if I dog sit your animals, I will
watch deep shows.
I will
Binge your Netflix.
smother your dogs with love and watch a show.
Sounds great. Michael.
I'll kind of put on my holier than thou. So, my name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here at Grace. I really don't watch a lot of TV anymore. It's just like sports. And I'm not really a movie guy, so I read books.
Sure.
So I'm currently in a 3-volume series about Theodore Roosevelt. I like reading biographies. I get to the end of the day, my mind is shot. I just need to ride along with the story.
Theodore Roosevelt?
I just finished D.L. Moody, a biography of D.L.
yeah.
Moody. So
I need to
Teddy
unwind.
Roosevelt
I need
and-
some Teddy. I need to snuggle up with Teddy Roosevelt right now.
it's like a
Historical novel.
Yeah, but it's fun. I like it. Yeah.
Great. Cool. Is that what you go to? Like historical, like accurate
I
biographies?
go back and forth between like a Christian figure and so I did like Billy Graham, I've
Okay,
done like Martin
but
Luther,
biographies.
but then biographies of
Yeah, okay,
Teddy
cool.
Roosevelt, other
One of my
Great.
favorite
Nelson
books
Mandela.
is historical fiction.
Okay, let's hear
Yeah.
it.
It's called The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Highly recommend.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
It's on my nightstand, I
It is
think.
my
My friend gave it to me.
You have to read it.
Yeah.
It
I
is
have-
my
it's on
favorite
it's on
book.
my,
Oh my gosh.
It's in my pile. Okay.
Please read it and let me know
I will
immediately.
let you know. I owe it back to her. Thank you, Marcy.
Go.
Getting strange vibes today.
Today's going to be one of those ones, everyone.
buckle up.
But yeah,
I just got like a ton of compliments just anecdotally from people about the podcast, so don't get comfortable, I guess.
Today's only crash and burn.
No takesies, backsies.
Yeah.
My name is Steven. I also work here at Grace. And I mean, we all work here.
Not for long.
I recently read, I've read a number of books, but one that stood out was the book by David Goggins, who's a pretty controversial character right now. But it was essentially a biography, and it was fascinating. Fascinating. He is such an intense person.
Yeah.
But when you read his story and you understand the trauma that he went through and now how he responds as a result, oh my gosh, it was just like, it was eye-opening. Didn't necessarily agree with everything in it, but just how he now handles and tackles situations in life as a result. And he's originally from Buffalo, New York. So,
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
so as he was telling like the first part of the book, I'm like, oh, I know that street. Oh, yeah.
Fun.
Oh, I know that place. That was cool.
You gotta add that to my pile.
So I would highly recommend it as well. Just it's a fascinating book. So
Great.
anyway,
Cool. I'll bring it back down a little bit lower. I started watching Loki the other day on Disney Plus, the second season. I was obsessed with I'm obsessed with that show. Loki.
Loki,
It's in the Marvel universe.
You don't know?
He's like a time traveling god of chaos. But so inspiration for Christmas. But also, I don't know. It's just like an escapism thing. This one, it's like a half hour
Happy.
per episode. you can't binge it. They release it one at a time. Just catch it when you can, like old school.
Remember those days?
Old school.
You'd have to wait until 7 p.m.
Yeah.
6 Eastern to get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we just finished episode 8 of The Chosen on season 3.
Oh,
So like we're done now.
So you're done.
Sexy.
I'm not.
yeah. And it was good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's also.
How
a
dare
good-
they make us wait?
If you're going to be on a streaming platform, you need to make it all available. No.
Well, they do, but you just have to wait to launch it, and then you can watch it
Still
whenever
got
you
to
want.
film it.
They still got to make the dang content. Geez, Sarah.
Make it ahead of
Takes
time.
them
and
20
release
years,
it all
so
at
they
once. Yeah.
we got all 10 seasons right here, guys.
We're just going to drip it to
No,
them.
The entire season needs to be available immediately to stream.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, do not really
Gotcha.
like Love is Blind does
take
this
that
on
up with
Netflix.
Disney.
Like,
Uh-oh.
not cool.
Here we go.
And we're not.
We're devolving.
Leave it
That's fine. Love is blind. Gotcha, Sarah.
Pull up.
All right. So, hey, since we're already going down a rabbit trail, part of the reason that we wanted to do this Exiles podcast is to take things that we're learning just about through Mark and just other things and intersect kind of our Christian faith with what's going on in the world, with what our neighbors are talking about, with what our friends are talking about, who may or may not be believers. And so full disclosure, this is being recorded on October 12th. So I'm telling you that because I want to have a discussion about the conflict in Israel, and who knows actually what will be going on by the time this airs. So give us some grace. We're going to talk about it as it stands on October 12th. And really, as we're talking, I would love to give you guys some practical things to listen for. I'm just pulling back the curtain for you so you understand why we're doing this. And if we do in the future, we probably won't go into this big preamble, but you'll be in on the ground floor a bit. So we really just want to model like how to have a conversation. We think we've lost the art as Christians in this polarized society to be able to just have conversations with people that might even slightly disagree. Yeah. We, as Pastor Derek has said so often, we put people in categories based on phrases that they say and assumptions and things. So part of the reason we want to do this is just practically model that for you, but then also just give you some things to think about that are going on in the world. So I'm just going to leave it pretty open-ended. So any initial thoughts about what's going on in Israel that you want to share? And we'll go back. Let's just talk back and forth. It doesn't have to be big speeches.
I mean, my initial reaction was shock. Obviously, I mean, this is
like waking up to it,
waking up and reading on my feed, and as the scale of first the kind of the bloodshed that was being caused to the nation of Israel, and then as everything the scale of bloodshed now happening in Gaza, and so just shock and wanting to find out what's next. Just it's super unfortunate.
Yeah.
We're in multiple thousands, and I don't think there's on both sides.
Yeah.
And there's no, it's not winding down, it's winding up. And it's just, I don't know, it's heartbreaking to watch and to see the pain and grief on both sides.
Yeah.
The stories on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree that my initial response is just the tragedy of the collateral of war. Mm-hmm. I don't think we think about it. I think when we consider war, we so often just think about who wins and who loses, but we don't think about the shocking stories of children and what's happening to them right now, and just the collateral of war just breaks my heart.
And they're always the losers. Mm-hmm. They're winner, loser, and another loser always.
Yep.
So for me, it's. I think this is a perfect example of why it is so important to understand all sides of the story. Mm-hmm. I want to say right off the bat before I start talking that what Hamas is doing is extremely barbaric and cruel and evil, okay? Mm-hmm. Right off the bat. I think we also, when all this is happening, I think it's extremely important for all of us to take the time to understand what Palestine has been through, the Gaza Strip, Israel. There is a story that is much bigger than what you're seeing right now, and you have to take the time to educate yourself. And if you do, you're going to realize that this stuff's been going on since, 47? I think is when it all started.
Oh,
that's still even just kind of
So there's a lot of history, and again, I am not saying their behavior is okay. It's not, but we're already seeing on social media and news outlets, the this arguing, oh, you're on Israel's side, or oh, you're on Palestine's side. And it's already beginning about, division and things like that. So I encourage us as Christians to take the time to educate yourself on all aspects.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, anybody who says this is simple black and white thing
has no idea.
Has no idea. You're just,
this
you have
has
no
been
clue.
trying to be solved for decades, and it will never be solved. There is no excuse for murdering women and children, or even just
Yeah.
So
Extremely
that's inexcusable. However, that act on that, I think this past Saturday, didn't occur in a vacuum.
Right.
Is what you're saying, Sarah. Like there has been, not since, Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007 and just the airstrikes that they've been terrorizing Israel with, but then Israel and the way they've limited freedoms and limited opportunities for those in the Gaza Strip and
basic needs.
And there's a difference in the way Arabs and Israelis are treated in the state of Israel. Absolutely. And how that feeds into, and you can just keep pulling the thread, and there's the actions are inexcusable.
Yes.
But they didn't occur in a vacuum, and there are complicating factors that go back generations, centuries.
Did you guys know that Hamas has their headquarters, war room in the basement of a hospital?
No.
That's intentional.
It's super strategic and intentional. Anyway, that's a lot. Made me think of that. It's just insane. It's insane the things that people think of. I don't know. Anyway. So for Christians, I think a lot of times, and this has happened to me in the past, there are things about being a Christian that I think some of us, I'll just speak for myself, I inherited.
Oh, yeah.
You come into the family and you inherit the stuff. And one of them is this relationship with Israel. And I understand, I get it. But it was never, when I first started hearing, oh yeah, Israel this, Israel that, yeah, Israel, yeah, we always stand with Israel, da, 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 da. I was like, okay, cool. But the thing that I think is confusing is that the Israeli government is not infallible. Mm-hmm. It's not like we have to just be we have to co-sign all the stuff because we stand with Israel, because we stand with our extended family, if you will. I don't know. That's always been a tension point for me in recent decades. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying I don't stand with our family. I'm saying I don't necessarily feel like that means I have to agree with what the government is, how the government is and has responded toward the Palestinian people and toward,
And it's okay if you don't want to take a side.
Oh, that's
it's okay if you're just neutral across the board and you're just willing to look at the situation as it's a big picture and educate on all aspects of it. I think there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. You don't have to take a side.
So we see in Scripture, there's general revelation. God has revealed himself generally to all people. However, his special revelation includes his word, and his word, and the culmination of which is Jesus, he chose to bring about through a chosen people, the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. That is clear. And even though we're in the New Covenant time, I don't believe there is still something about the people of Israel that I think is special to God.
I agree, yeah.
So the Jewish people, when the pastors, and we talked about, this past Sunday and having a prayer moment for the conflict, Derek said, the Jewish people are part of our spiritual heritage. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't believe, and this is more Mike, I don't believe the modern state of Israel is synonymous with the Jewish people. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, Danielle, is we don't have to rubber stamp what the modern state of Israel does and feel like we're obligated to as a Christian, because I don't think it's synonymous. But there should be a brotherhood, a sisterhood we as Christians feel with the Jewish people, and as we should be grieving with them in this moment. Uh-huh. Yeah, so many.
Well, in Romans 11, where I wrote down so I don't forget, Romans 11:17, we read that, which is exactly what you're saying, we're grafted into Abraham's promise. Mm-hmm. And it would be like if someone was beating up your cousin in the playground and you were just I don't know, and just walked away.
Yeah.
It's your extended, it's our extended heritage, our extended family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree.
But I think as Jesus walked on this earth as well, just because a people was part of a promise, it didn't excuse them from the challenge of what's truly going on in their heart.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in fact, Jesus was harder with those who who were part of the family. So if we look at the Pharisees and we look at the religious leaders, very hard with those individuals because they subscribe to and held to a certain standard. But Jesus says, we shouldn't commit adultery. And what did Jesus say? Well, I say, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, then you've already committed adultery. So, he's pulling back those onion layers of...
He's raising the bar.
Yeah, it's not this superficial, we can't think about type of relationship.
Right.
It's like, but I mean, we have to get serious with one another if we are truly family. And I think there's a danger now in this sort of Western society, Western culture, where we just adopt a tradition blindly,
Right.
And we're not really thinking about it. So I went to Israel actually weeks before the pandemic. I was lucky.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
Didn't get stuck. In
That's not a
Israel.
place you want to get stuck.
Because they shut down fast.
Yeah.
They shut down fast. It was literally like the week after.
Yeah.
I was home and it was, pandemic started. Anyway,
Wow.
it was fascinating to me. And I've shared this story a couple of times, but I was, obviously American tour party, and we had an Israeli, a Jewish tour guide, who was, for lack of better words, anti the rest of the world, especially anti-Palestine. So when we got to the border in places, he would make, I would say
comments and stuff?
Yeah, inappropriate comments, and we were part of a American tour bus who was siding and enjoying those comments. So there was like amens when I would say he said something inappropriate, and my dad and I are like looking at each other and we're like, this just feels
weird,
awkward
and not right.
And again, I'm Scottish,
Sure.
but I am an American citizen at this point. And so I feel like I have a little bit of a worldly perspective, or a broader perspective, not a worldly perspective.
Well,
but
whatever. Take it.
Anyway, but what was interesting was halfway during the tour that we were on, that tour guide's sister passed away. And so he had to go do like the 7-day, Jewish burial rituals, all those things. So we got a new tour guide who was actually a converted Christian from Palestine.
Whoa.
Who actually hated Jews prior, met Jesus, and now his mission is to evangelize the Jewish people.
It's like Paul.
And it was,
Yeah.
it was,
That's wild.
it was so fascinating, guys. Like I tell you, because
The tone. Probably.
the tone was totally different. The care that he was talking about, the world, how the world needs Jesus. But it was just amazing to see how fickle the tour bus was. And so there was amen with the the anti-Palestine remarks, but then there was also amens with this new tour. And my dad and I are looking at each other and like, they don't understand. They don't understand. Like,
they don't understand what they're doing.
Listening.
Oh,
and
they're not informed. Like
such a fascinating social experiment, honestly.
that you need to like write a book about that. That's
It was wild to me just sitting back, but it just reminded me like how quickly we can follow blindly. And just be influenced by the narratives, the predominant narratives that are speaking into our life, and we don't really stop to think. And I think that's what we ought to do in a situation like this.
Yeah, that's good.
So we have to stop and we have to think.
Yes.
Jesus walked through Samaria when everybody else took 3 days to walk around Samaria, and so we can't be just shallow Christians to think that we have to idolize or jump on a bandwagon really fast, because there's damage that happens.
Totally. And in America, right. And in America, I think we also get tangled up with the governmental side of things, where that we've talked about this before, we kind of overly rely on our government to legislate our morality and things like that. And so, if our government says, oh, this is a staunch ally of us, we're just like, great. Just like, it just, it feeds into what we can sometimes do. Dave said something interesting to me this morning. We were talking about this, and I've never thought about it this way, which shame on me, but he said, when stuff like this happens, especially in and around like Israel, his eyes in particular are opened up to this spiritual battle that's going on. That is the war that's happening that we're not seeing is way more insane than what we're seeing play out, which is unbelievable, but it's true. And just like he said, for him, this kind of stuff around Israel throughout all of history is like proof to him that this war is going on and that God is real. God becomes more real to him, not because of war, but you know, which I thought was just a cool, interesting perspective.
Is it this like center of the universe reality? Like it's just for centuries.
Yeah, exactly.
This has
like,
been
why?
happening.
Why?
Yeah, in this tiny little plot of land. I mean,
well, and not even the land, but I mean, I think if you look back at thousands of years of persecution that the Jewish people have felt, God, and again, the modern state of Israel, in my mind, is not synonymous with. However, the Jewish people have endured such
which is just
persecution all over the world, and that's still God's chosen people.
Right.
What that means is different now in the new covenant, but that's still God's chosen
still
people.
True.
And I think the spiritual warfare aspect of it and the oppression that they felt, I think that's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because they're still God's special possession.
Yeah, at a very basic level, it does. It just points back to the fact that God is real.
Right.
And there's a war between good and evil going on.
Right.
And the people that God chose are persecuted as a result of they're in they're center of it. Yeah.
So I guess I don't know how long you want to sit on this, Danielle, but I guess I guess what I would want to say to everybody listening is it's very clear in the Old Testament that we share that with the Jewish people that God's heart is for the foreigner, the widow, and the orphan.
Yeah.
Throughout the Old Testament, God says, pay special attention to the foreigner, the widow, and the orphan. There are widows and orphans on both sides of this conflict.
Yes.
And depending on the perspective, the lens you use to look, both sides could be considered foreigners.
Yeah.
And so
that's true.
I guess I would just say, as we think about it, let's not be blindly go with, don't be fickle and just be informed. And I think just be willing to see both sides. I guess, there are people that God loves on both sides. And there's conflict that is a result of sin that is coming to both sides. And we need to be able to hold that tension and not just paste over a black and white and assume. That would be
that's great.
What I hope people take away.
That's great.
And I think that's good too. I think about the Old Testament as it relates to the nation of Israel as well. And yes, there was an exclusivity that existed, but the door was never closed.
Correct.
The door was never closed. I would go as far as, and this might be a little bit too broad, and some people might push back on this, but I would go as far as saying that the nation of Israel was set apart for the world to see what a relationship with God was to look like.
I see what you're saying.
Should be. In God's pursuit of redemption of this world. But people were still welcome to join that nation. There was still a grafting that was available in the Old Testament too. Obviously, it looks different now in this New Testament reality through grace and faith in Jesus. But it wasn't like, oh, we're a nation of Israel, everybody's out.
Right.
There was a real reality where just as exactly what you were saying, Mike, people were allowed in. The door wasn't.
The lineage of Jesus has foreigners in it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a really important point for us to at least acknowledge.
And I don't think this is what you're saying, but also it just made me think the complications that arise around a religion that is also an ethnicity.
Yeah.
It started then. It could be very complicated. And it's all right. You're
just so quiet.
It's all right.
I have a lot of thoughts about all this, but I'm not ready to talk about them. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
And if you have to keep processing it, don't feel if you get in a conversation with someone that you have to have all the answers and you have to defend yourself. Just be like, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that, or I don't know about that, or I don't know how to touch base on that.
Yeah, you can still sit in a conversation
Don't
with the
make
person
something
and
up.
not have to.
That's good.
Absolutely.
That's good, Sarah. Thanks.
So that's where I'm at.
Great. And so, and also I want to share with you guys that today's sermon, big idea was Jesus is Lord of everything, so you can rest easy.
Thank goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
Come on. We have Sarah Burt, Pastor Sarah was telling me the other day, we were having a conversation and she was just saying how we have this reality, right, of the here and not yet and the whole thing to come, and how we have a gift to have a posture of walking through difficult and weird things and knowing what's coming.
A sovereign perspective.
So, and I think she was saying, Zach on Sunday, Zach Cathcart, shout out, did a really good verbal where he talked about like, if you were like going through all the motions to get into Harvard, you got to do all the tests, you got to do all the stuff, you deal with bullies in school, you got to do things. But the thing is, you already got into Harvard. You know you're already in Harvard, and you're just going through all this stuff and dealing with all these things. I thought that was like a really cool way to put it. So yeah, Jesus is Lord of everything, so you can rest easy. We're talking about legalism and the Sabbath. Again, this is another one of those we talked about a couple times ago. There's a string of narratives here where Jesus is going to be like, not only is this true, but I'm the God of it, so deal with it. He's just kind of laying out what's happening in the kingdom, the new kingdom, new wineskins and all that. So Pastor Eric talks about 3 markers of legalism. Legalists add their own rules to Scripture. They appoint themselves as judge over others, and they strictly hold everyone to their own rules of choice. Any experience with that, with yourself or people around you that you want to talk about, or how you've dealt with it in the past? Whatever.
So growing up, I thought, legalists were just the fundamental Christians.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I came to realize, having had experience with maybe, I would say, hyper charismatic or Pentecostal, that there's also a fundamentalism that exists there. The legalists can actually exist on both sides.
Yes.
And I love that Derek mentioned that in the message as well. Like, it's not like, oh, we're fundamental Christians, so therefore we're legalists. So the pendulum swings over to Pentecostalism because legalists can live there as well. And I experienced a lot of that as a lead pastor, just from both sides. And it's really difficult to navigate. It's so difficult to navigate. Excuse me. And I'll be honest, I found myself in response to some of the negative experiences that I had towards, I would say, hyper-Pentecostals, actually moving towards fundamentalism and the legalistic side of that. And starting to dip my toe into the unhealth that exists, because it's easier to really pitch your tent in a camp and just camp there and not necessarily walk that uncomfortable line.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah,
and
right.
And so I think just confessionally, I've experienced that in my life. Even when I came to Grace, there's probably areas that I had settled in that when I came to Grace, I was challenged in, and I've come to realize that maybe I made a secondary issue a primary issue.
Oh, that happens a lot to me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is the balance between legalism and license in the church, because he talked about that too. Legalism, you got to do it this way. License, anything goes. And it's been I grew up United Methodist. Okay. Attended a lot of non-denominational churches. Here at Grace, we're actually Baptist at our roots, guys. Don't freak out too much.
Please edit that out.
So it's...
Just kidding.
But moving into Erie with a very Catholic background... So actually, I preached earlier this year, and actually Derek got some emails about a way I had phrased something, and we actually went back through it. I was speaking probably to my background, those who take license, like, no, you actually, you can't just pray a prayer and then it's done, and then that's not salvation. Salvation is receiving a regenerated heart and then actually taking steps and being sanctified, and so your life needs to match it. But as I was trying to speak to my background, those with license, I was doing it in in our context here of Erie, of a very kind of Catholic that can tend towards legalism, and it spurred a reaction from some.
Sure.
Because I probably wasn't as articulate as I should have been, and it's so there's legalism in both sides. There's license. We need to have a balance. We can actually learn from each other, but I've said it before. I feel like the Christian life is sometimes like a knife edge. Yeah. And you slip and fall, and you try to get back on path. But so that's just been a fascinating experience to me to kind of be in this Erie. There's a specific spiritual context here in Erie that I'm learning, and I think a lot of it has to do with that balance of license and legalism.
Yeah.
The majority of the people that I know that are no longer part of religion or have a relationship with Christ in any way, the main thing I hear is they were so beat down by all the rules and all the things that they couldn't accomplish, and all of this weight of constant failure. And so the legalism side of it with all the rules, that's what I see the most in my life with the people who are that I encounter.
Yeah.
They just get so sick of it and they miss out on the entire relationship. They're just so focused on the list of rules that are beat on them that by the time, and most of it was pushed on them all through childhood. And then when they were old enough to make a decision for themselves, they were like, I'm out, because they had been beat down. And Jesus was never properly introduced to them. They were so like focused on these rules being put on them that when they finally were able to make a decision for their own, they were literally too excited to know him, or not excited, exhausted.
Exhausted to know.
They're like, I'm out. Like, I don't want anything to do with it.
Wow.
And that's the biggest thing that I see in my life personally with people.
I agree. I grew up Lutheran, which, let's be honest, it's like Catholic adjacent. There's like two, like the mainline Lutheran stuff is like a couple things different, and that's about it. But that's the story. It's like you have all these like rules and liturgies and, you know, all these things that you're doing, and there's just like somehow no relationship with Jesus at all.
There's no room for it.
But I think the positive thing for like those kind of people, and like for what happened to me, is like, if you can get away from that and like not encounter it, you know, deal with it, when you go back to it, it is so rich and beautiful.
Oh, that's good.
Like like for people who are maybe like ex-Catholic or whatever, like, not that you have to go back to a Catholic church, but like that journey can be so awesome. So awesome.
When Derek says in his message about all those things are supposed to take you to Jesus and like build this excitement.
Right.
When you get to a point where those things are actually, everything is being done wrong. If it is taking that excitement away, like it's so sad.
Yeah, like
and I did it to myself. I did it to myself for a long time. Like, I have to like have this perfect checklist and I have to do all this stuff. And it literally exhausted me. It got to a point where I was almost insecure and afraid to sit with him at all because I couldn't deal with the guilt and the shame of it all. And then, you know, it worked itself out, but thank goodness.
Yeah. Like, I mean, Jesus is very clear that the Sabbath was supposed to reinvigorate, refresh, and those rules had just exhausted the people. You know, so in order to be refreshed, we must A plus B equals C. Or, I mean, there was more. there was more than just
15,000 things.
You know, just lots. I lost my train of thought there. Come back to me.
That's right. No, you were saying, go ahead.
Well, and then again, so the flip side is, and again, that's my back. Oh, we don't throw out all the rules.
Yeah.
Because you read there were rules about the Sabbath, and there does need to be rules, but we can't add on top of what God has said because we are devaluing what God has said or what God has ordained. And I just think there's, you know, when we went through the Apostles' Creed in June, I was talking with people with a Catholic background, and you know, they were like, you know, one thing I learned in the Catholic tradition and reverence.
That's a good.
We're not great at reverence on more, you know, maybe our side, our flavor of faith.
Sure.
But there's something to be learned about. You need to prepare yourself to come before a holy God. So we can learn from each other. We need to not swing. One's not better than the other.
Yeah. So I truly believe that the intent in the traditions that exist in this world today, as it pertains to the Christian faith, including Catholics in there as well. I believe the intent was good.
Yes.
Yeah, I do too.
So the original intent, and they say, you know, give anything 20 years and it will be corrupted by sin.
Sure. 20 minutes.
20 minutes. But like when you, if you've ever been to Rome and you step into the Vatican City and the beauty, like you cannot ignore the reverence. The original reverence, the original intent of that building, like it was an act of worship.
Yeah, it was built
now
for
it's
God.
far from perfect now, and obviously, you know, plenty of controversies over the years in the Catholic Church.
Sure.
But my encouragement has always been, and this has been part of my journey. So I came, you know, from Scotland, didn't really understand Christian tradition, nor did I really care. It was a pretty active, growing church. I don't want to use the word progressive because I think that'll get lost.
Yeah, probably.
But it was a, you know, focused on the community. It was a growing church. You know, probably focused less on traditions and those sorts of things. So when I came and I became a youth pastor and a lead pastor of a small country church that had a high emphasis on tradition, I had no idea, So I remember being a youth pastor and the church, after the offering, the church standing up and then singing the doxology.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like the youth pastor of the church. I'm like, I've never heard this before. Never heard this. And I remember feeling so insecure.
Funny. Yeah.
But my point is this, and hopefully this can serve as an encouragement to some people that are listening. Never stop asking the question why.
Yeah, why do we?
Because I found that part of my story. And I don't think I handled it well. So I apologize to my church if anybody's listening early on. Because if you couldn't give me a reason for the why, then we stopped doing it.
Oh, you were just.
And I was maybe a little bit harder than I needed to be, but asking the question why gives you the opportunity, or gives the other person the opportunity to maybe rediscover the beauty again.
Yeah. If you have to make a case for something, you have to.
Correct. And it allowed me the opportunity to appreciate, like you're saying, Danielle, appreciate the beauty that existed in the original intent. So I came in my journey, the 12 years I was there, to really appreciate some of the beauty of what was established and what we honored and became tradition.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so just encourage, so often we throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ought to do that.
That actually is.
I never.
That's a real one.
never heard
You've never heard that?
Nope.
Oh.
You're lying.
I swear.
That's actually a real.
I'm gonna get it. I'm bringing a notebook from now.
You
on
should, but
because
that's a real one.
But what's interesting, Stephen, is so the Pharisees.
Gardy Lou. The baby's coming.
The amount of people that have said Gardy Lou to me.
Yeah.
That's going to be our first merch, Gardy Lou.
So what's interesting
Bubbly
is
font. I can see it.
in the passage, the Pharisees ask why. Right? Why do your disciples, and Jesus gives them the why, and so.
But they ask why with a closed heart.
It's a
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
the posture.
But he uses that
There's a cynicism.
because your stuff is crap, and here's the why for the real. Here's the
Yeah.
Sabbath made for
Yeah.
me.
So we have to ask why with an open and ready to learn heart. And that even goes with the Israel conflict that we're talking about earlier as well. Like if we don't know, that's okay. But we need to ask why with a posture that's ready to learn. Not a cynical why.
Right.
Because there's no benefit to anybody. And that's just entertaining pride.
That's good.
I agree. Yeah, and so as we're talking about Sabbath specifically, again, this is another one of those like great relational gifts from God. It's this gift of that also is sanctifying us, but it's a gift. Just the way that God orchestrated all this, if you can get your brain around it, is really we're very lucky people. So Sabbath definition: to cease. And practically it's one 24-hour period each week devoted to rest from work. So we'll get into actually, let me just say now. So Pastor Eric gave like a helpful framework also. First of all, obviously is finding like a when it would happen, but then 4 things: unplug, gather, worship, and rest or recreate. Let's just talk about our own personal journeys with Sabbath and learnings along the way.
I'm terrible at it.
No.
Really, really
No.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Admittedly, I'm a workaholic,
And
and
people shocked.
people laugh when I say
Let's
that.
put our shock face
But
on.
I think it's a real problem.
It is.
It's
It
a
is.
real problem that I have to constantly be reminded of, and people around me, safe people around me, need to remind me.
Sure.
You're working too much. You're working too much. And so Sabbath, quite honestly, is a foreign concept.
Yeah.
In my life, it's not foreign to me, but it's
Not for you.
in practice, it's really foreign. I have to work, ironically,
Work to make it happen.
get it.
work
Yeah.
to make it happen, because I don't enjoy it. If I'm being honest,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't enjoy the rest side of it because I can't understand.
why it's beneficial.
Is it your mind?
I
Do you not shut your mind off?
enjoy working. I really enjoy
Oh.
it. And it's
Which is valid.
there's a productivity. Like I like to produce results and those sorts of things. But if I had to choose what I enjoyed most, resting is not part of that. Working is part. If it was an enjoyment
Yeah.
Scale.
scale, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So what about what Derek kind of, I thought it was super helpful, like those who work with the the mind use the hands to rest and the mind. So is there,
Absolutely.
can you be productive in a different way that allows what you use 9 to 5?
Until I came to Grace, I'd never heard that.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
And that was really helpful to me because there was this shame, guilt reality that I wrestle with because I'm like, I don't enjoy this right now. It's not restful to rest.
Right.
And so I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen that part of the framework before. Like worship makes sense to me, you know. Gathering with people makes sense to me. What was the one? What was the unplug? Like that. All those make sense to me. But this idea of rest or recreate, that those that work with their minds can work with their hands, and those that work with their hands can, you know, work with their minds or rest with their minds.
Yeah.
Because I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I'm at a computer all day, working with my mind, but I love to make stuff.
Yeah.
And for that to be an option, I never knew it was an option before.
Yeah.
So in this last 3.5 years, it's been a journey for me that it's almost like you have permission to now, in a way that makes sense, not in a way that I feel guilty about or not enjoy.
You can Sabbath with Marlo in the backyard making the fort.
Correct.
And that's a Sabbath, even though you're active, you're Sabbathing, and you're gathering with your child, and you're,
which I never knew was an option before.
Cool. Do you have the same, I think we talked about this a little bit before, do you have the same issue when it comes to like a daily or semi-daily connection with God time?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Just on a smaller scale.
Yeah, and I would even say coming to Grace, it's been a big journey for me coming to Grace. But being a lead pastor and having a personal devotional time with God was part of my sermon prep. And so when I no longer preached on a weekly basis, like it's
the rhythm.
producing results and, serving people and caring for people, and I could lump my stuff into it as well. Now no longer preaching. Like, okay, I don't know what a personal devotional time really looks like. Yeah. And I've been a Christian since I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And so there's just been a lot of this like discovery, rediscovery for me in this season of life where you think, people look at you as, as a lead pastor, like, oh, he's got it all figured out. And then I come to Grace 3 years ago and I'm like, I don't really have a whole lot figured out. I knew how to be a pastor, but how to be a Christian?
Yeah, that's good.
With a true personal faith. I'm now just learning some stuff. Which is fascinating.
So there is, and so I've talked about, I think the last couple of weeks, talking about like time with, I have rediscovered in the last year, more out of necessity than anything, the rhythms of Jesus, which Sabbath is one of them. And so I have tried to build it in, and I think I've done a better job in the last year, and it's honestly helped me. My default is anger. I've learned how to patch drywall in my house. Don't worry. Emily and the girls are safe. It's fine. But like
the drywall is not.
Yeah, the drywall's getting there. But as I've like, all right, I'm going to actually carve some time out of my week and I'm going to rest.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's more than just not working for me. I used to like, all right, then I'll get all the hobbies in on this one day and then I'm exhausted after doing all the yard work. I can do it, but there needs to be some like balance there. So I have been far more intentional, especially the unplugging. I don't have Facebook anymore. I set my phone on, you got to have, your blood has to be in, we have to share blood. We have to be family for you to get through on my phone on my Sabbath day. Yeah. Otherwise, call Emily.
That's a good tip.
And it has helped me. Yeah. Like I am now, heck, I lost my phone in the woods on Monday. That's normally something where I'd have gotten ticked off about. But I'm even looking back, like in my time with God today, like, wow, I actually handled that a lot better.
Oh, good.
But because those daily and these weekly rhythms, I've begun to like really carve out and try to do well. So it works. It actually helps. It's like God knows what he's doing or something. It's wild.
I know. How does he know it, right? I've made mistakes along both of the lines of what you guys are saying, like just thinking that Sabbath is like this, and it is a decompression time, but I would like decompress toward like isolation or entertainment or something like that. And that's fine, whatever. If you want to watch a movie on your Sabbath, fine, whatever. Watch a movie on your Sabbath. It's not a big deal. It's not, you don't have to be legalistic about it. But like, I would like literally be like, I need to finish the show or whatever, or something stupid like that. Like, and I've had such better shots at it. Again, I'm not super consistent to what you're saying, Steve, and I agree with that. Like, it's hard for me to be consistent with it. But when I do manage to make it happen, having that mindset of like, oh, so I can be with my family while this is happening, and that's fine, and that's good. And I can go do this craft thing or whatever thing with Dax because that's fine and that's good. And it's all things that are like out of the normal rhythm.
Yes.
That's kind of the mindset that I try to use. Like, what do I not have time for, but like, I don't know, what can I like maximize right now?
And I do take a little bit extra time with God. I'll take a little bit extra longer chair time. I literally have a Sabbath book, and I read one chapter.
Oh, I thought you had like a journal.
Well, no, it's like a book. So say it's got 12 chapters, it's going to take me 3 months because I'm reading one chapter in the afternoon.
It's only for the Sabbath.
Only for the Sabbath.
Oh,
when
that's
the
a cool
girls
idea.
go
What's it
down.
called?
Right now I'm reading Deeply Formed
Only
Life.
for the Sabbath.
I just finished Renovation of the Heart by Dallas Willard.
Oh, you're choosing a book and assigning it for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought you meant the Sabbath. Yeah.
Oh, that makes more. So I have a book. I only read one chapter on every one of my Sabbaths. And so during nap
That's
time,
a great tip.
I will sit there in the afternoon, and I tell you what, I get way more out of that book than I do if I'm just trying to slap pages around at night, like when I'm tired. So
I want to touch base on the guilt that we feel if we are doing Sabbath. Like, I think we briefly touched
That's a good-
okay? Like,
Yes.
we think we're doing something wrong. There's all this stuff that has to be done, and we feel guilty about doing it, and, et cetera. I really, really appreciated Derek and his message because as I was watching it, he's talking about the Sabbath, and I'm yelling at my computer. I'm yelling, but God literally took a Sabbath. God did it. God, like the guy.
Who are we?
And then Derek says it. And then Derek says, God took a Sabbath, everyone. Like, the God of the universe, the Almighty, took a Sabbath. Why on earth do we think that we don't need a Sabbath?
and he didn't even need it, but he didn't.
That's the point. Like, so to me, I get, like, when I'm having trouble resting, I'm like, God actually did this. I probably should do it.
So I have this phrase that runs through my head from time to time, and is it God? I don't know, but it acts as an accountability tool for me, and I think it goes along the lines of the Sabbath. Like I've worked in Christian ministry pretty much my entire career, working career, and from time to time, like I just like. Will I get to the end of my life? And how much will Jesus look? I guess I'm trying to put my thoughts together.
You're fine. You're trying to go Sarah on something. This is neat. I love it.
Get to the end of my life, and Jesus will be like, "Listen,
Great job.
80% of that I didn't ask you to do."
Wow.
I think about that.
All
Like
the time.
all the time. Like I spent so much time justifying things for God, and while I get to the end, and Jesus was like, "It was so much more simple. I didn't ask you to do 80% of that." And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think about that all the time. So along the Sabbath line, like I'm going to get to the end of my life exhausted. And Jesus is going to be like, "Listen,
I did all that.
you had so many opportunities just to rest and enjoy me.
You just wouldn't do it.
You just wouldn't do it." And so those are like just thoughts that run through my head all the time. As I'm sitting and we're like editing a video for church, or getting all the graphics together, or preparing for Christmas at the Warner, and like all of this is good, but like how much of it will Jesus be like,
Well, thanks.
it was great, but I didn't ask you to do it. It's almost like a dad going, "Great job."
yeah, I didn't need it, but thank you.
But
Thanks. I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah. So
No,
anyway,
stop. That's
anyway.
that's too far. But no, I totally resonate. Totally resonate with that. And then anyway, we won't go there.
You could talk about seeing him all day.
Okay, so we have our discipleship question, our normal one. How does this picture of Jesus compel me to live differently? Again, that's in reference to anytime Jesus kind of puts it out on the table that he's the Son of God, Son of Man, kind of shows who he is. This is the question we want to ask ourselves. So how does this picture of Jesus in this situation, talking to these people about the Sabbath, how does that compel us to live differently? Derek gives us a bonus question, which I think gets at the heart of this particular situation. What's a small step I could take toward a healthy Sabbath rhythm? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I think that should be everyone's question, but any initial thoughts on that?
What was that?
What small step could I take toward developing a healthy Sabbath rhythm if you don't have one already?
I think find 3 hours. Start
Yeah.
small. You don't
Yeah.
got to go hit
That's
a home
good.
run on the
That's
first
good.
at bat. Like find a 2 or 3 hour period and start this week. Not next week, not next, like this week, 2 or 3 hours. Find it, do it.
And like I always say, keep talking to Jesus about it. Just go to him and be like, I'm really struggling with Sabbath, and just keep do the small, like start small and just keep talking about it.
Careful, you'll end up in a hospital or something. It'll be like, you want a Sabbath? Boom.
Well, that's usually my story. I'm not saying that God does that, but Nicole's like, oh, you're sick again.
Oh, I know. My body,
This is intentional.
my body will shut all the way down. After Christmas, ask me if I'm sick. Ask me if I'm sick after Christmas. I promise you, I have RSV or something. I promise you. Yeah. So yes, pick a few hours, try it out. I would say maybe find something. If you're feeling like a productive person, like we're talking about, find something that you could do that's opposite of your normal work. Like Mike said, like if it's an example for me would be doing some organizing stuff in the basement. Using my hands, moving around, doing stuff, way different than just computer meetings, Try to do something like that.
I think an encouragement for me is, enjoy that hobby again.
That's good.
Probably somebody needs to hear that. You haven't
Pick it up.
picked that pencil up because you love drawing and you haven't done it in 10 years. Go enjoy the hobby again.
Woodworking. I don't do any of those things. But
Oh, I thought you did. I'm like,
Jesus.
let's go to your Hega or whatever it's called. What's your house
Paint by
called?
number. Hugo.
Huga. Hega, I said.
Huga.
Guys, I think that's it. That was good.
You guys
Please.
are just awesome. Seriously. Very insightful.
Oh, I thought she was
Very
talking to you, the
knowledgeable.
listener, but she was talking to
No, I
us,
was
the
talking
panel.
about the panel. I mean, you all are fantastic too, but
Yeah, I love talking to you guys. Please don't forget to send us some questions. Guys,
Yeah,
no one's
please.
sending us questions. It's super depressing.
And we know you're listening because we see the stats.
Yeah, we see the stats, and people are talking to us about it. So,
yeah. Please.
for real, send me
I'm
a question.
here
And
for
if you want it to be a surprise question, we'll do a stump
as
the
a-
panel or
oh.
something. It'll be fun.
Oh, wow.
Or if you want to know something about us, or if you want to tell us that was really dumb what you said.
Actually, the most time we take is what do we do for our intro question? What should we
intro-
help us? Help us.
That would be great.
Intro question.
Tell us what intro questions you want us to know. Yes, I love
good.
that.
Subscribe
Smart.
to this wherever you're listening. Give us a rating if you can. That'll help get this in other people's feeds and whatnot, and share it with somebody else so we know that we should keep going. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Bye.
Bye.